Hello everyone, we're going to take a look at the long-awaited AH-64 Delta for Digital Combat Simulator World. The Boeing AH-64 first took flight in 1975 to replace the AH-1 Cobra. The US Army started using the AH-64 in 1986 and on to Desert Storm. The two crew-member helicopter is equipped with a M320 chain gun, Hydra 70 rocket pods, and AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, giving the Army a huge advantage in anti-tank capabilities. Right now it's March 2022 and the AH-64 has just entered early access and it can now be purchased. In the hopefully not so long future, you will be able to try the AH-64 free for 2 weeks. This is normal for DCS as they allow unlimited access to their entire catalog with 2-week free trials that reset after 6 months. To get started on DCS, check out our detailed beginner's guide. Though it's early, the helicopter in its current state is presented in a professional way all around. The modeling consists of a highly detailed exterior, the prop blades actually show wear on the edges, the paint gives off the matte look, and finer details like serial numbers appear within reason. The interior features a near fully clickable cockpit. When I say near, I mean that in the minor sense that you can't pull stuff like the fuses, but you can unsafety the M4 and actually fire the trigger. The sounds are very impressive and unique too, from the APU, the engine start, the canopy opening and closing, weapons and alarms. It definitely sounds like what we know to be a McDonnell Douglas inspired war aircraft. If you already have helicopter experience, there isn't much of a learning curve. The AH-64 Delta feels smooth, and if you're smooth, it will reflect that back at you. Some of the most useful commands you will need to know and have mapped are as follows. Force trim, hold node switch D down, and this is going to trim the aircraft. It's a different kind of trim where you want to hold the stick where you want the aircraft to be flying, and then it'll trim to that level. The weapons action switch, these switch between what weapon you are using. You can do the up, down, right, left, map that to a hat switch, very useful for switching between the weapons. The AS push button, this arms the weapon system. The weapon's trigger guard open, this is the final thing you will push before firing, and then the weapon's trigger guard second detent, and that is going to fire the weapon. It also helps to have the George AI interface stuff set up. These are already mapped and I left them at the default. I like the default setup, so I kept it. Control V turns it on, and then the WSAD keys, like the typical game RPG where you walk around, it's that button setup for telling George what to do. And then consent to fire. This is not mapped, so you will need to map this. This is very important. Because flying the Apache relies heavily on teamwork, it's most effective when it's flown with two, so this can be done with somebody online if they would like to join and fly the front seat, or the very useful AI system called George. George can find and attack targets you point him towards while you handle the flight controls, or George can fly the helicopter and let you look for targets. So the key mappings for these commands are very helpful to learn. The only one not mapped, like I said, is consent to fire. This needs to be set for the AI to follow your fire commands, and you can switch between the two seats using the number 1 and 2 keys on the left of your keyboard. The commands for George AI change between the two seats. In the front seat, you have the AI flying commands.
Coming right. Coming right.
And back seat has the weapons AI commands.
Engaging.
If we want to see what George is looking at, the easiest way is to click the M key, Video, and then TADS. Now as the AI moves the camera to our commands, we'll see it too. I've left all the controls default, so to begin we can hit Control V to activate George. From here, we can tell him to move the scope to a general area with the W key, and if he finds targets in that area, they will be listed on your left. In this case, we have a truck convoy, and we're going to select one of them to focus on. You can use the S and W keys to scroll the list, and hitting D will save that target if you want to come back to it or keep watching it. The D key, when not in the target list mode, will also change the various modes your weapon may have. For instance, we can have the gun shoot in a burst of 20, 50, 100, or all. The rockets and Hellfire missiles have a couple of settings like this too, and the A key will also change between the gun, rockets, and missiles. Now that we have a truck locked, we can monitor it and attack when ready. To do this with an already selected target, just hit your consent to fire key. In my case, it's enter, and George will begin using the weapon so long as the AH-64 is within the parameters to fire. There's also an even easier way to use the weapons that's really fun. You can turn on the AS button, and you can also come to the weapons page and set the acquisition to forward and the distance to auto by clicking down here and then typing the A key and pressing enter. Now you can select the weapon type with the hat switch commands and press the weapon trigger guard open. Now you are free to move around and fire the weapon. And this is where head tracking and virtual reality become even more useful. I'm using the Tobii Eye Tracker 5, and as I move my head, the gun below the helicopter is turning to point at whatever I'm looking at. It's a pretty fun way to use the weapon system.
Rabbit 1 cleared to engage.
Rabbit 1 cleared hot. The AH-64 Delta is well worth picking up. I haven't flown anything else since I purchased it. It's easy to start if you already fly helicopters, and a solid choice if you want to learn how to fly helicopters in general. The George AI is brilliant, and it really fills the gap between the pilot in command and managing weapons. We can't wait to see how this helicopter continues to shape up.